What really happened the night Hollywood's most polished stage lost control? And more importantly, what did it reveal about power, pride, and the fragile architecture of fame? To understand that moment, you have to rewind, not just to the slap, but to the years of tension quietly accumulating beneath tuxedos and red carpets. The Oscars have always presented themselves as the ultimate symbol of artistic validation. Gold statues, orchestrated applause, choreographed laughter. But beneath the glamour lies an industry governed by box office numbers, brand leverage, and carefully managed image. When Jada Pinkett Smith announced she would boycott the Oscars years earlier, the declaration landed like a spark in dry grass. Headlines framed it as moral protest, a stand against exclusion and systemic bias. Panels debated representation. Op-eds multiplied. Social media ignited. Inside Hollywood, though, the response was more muted and more pragmatic. A boycott only disrupts power if the absence creates measurable loss. Did ratings collapse? Did sponsors flee? Did the Academy's influence weaken? The machine kept moving. Chris Rock recognized that reality instantly. As host that year, he faced a room brimming with tension. He could have sidestepped it. He could have delivered safe jokes and protected alliances. Instead, he did what comedians at their sharpest often do. He reframed the narrative. In Hollywood, awards do not respond to virtue. They respond to relevance. When Rock joked that skipping an invitation you never received isn't resistance, he wasn't merely chasing a laugh. He was exposing a structural truth. Symbolic gestures feel powerful, but in an ecosystem driven by profit margins and audience metrics, symbolism without leverage rarely rattles the foundation. Was it harsh? Yes. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But comedy has always lived in that space. Then Will Smith entered the conversation, not as an antagonist, but as a complicated emblem of the industry's contradictions. Rock acknowledged the disappointment surrounding concussion being overlooked. Many believed Smith's performance deserved recognition. But Rock also pointed out something harder to swallow. The same industry accused of snubbing him had paid him staggering sums for films that critics shredded. Was the system unfair? Possibly. But was the outrage consistent? That was the tension Rock leaned into. And then there was Kevin Hart. At a time when many black creatives spoke about closed doors and structural barriers, Hart appeared omnipresent. Franchises, hosting gigs, box office dominance. If Hollywood was systematically blocking opportunity, why were certain figures navigating it so successfully? Was the industry rejecting talent, or simply rewarding marketability above all else? By the end of that monologue, something subtle had shifted. Rock had not just roasted celebrities. He had questioned the mechanics of protest within a profit-driven institution. He had asked a room full of power players whether symbolic absence truly threatens a system built to monetize attention. The laughter that night carried tension. And tension, when unresolved, does not disappear. It waits. Years later, it returned, under brighter lights and heavier expectations. The 2022 Oscars opened with a familiar rhythm of spectacle. The Dolby Theater shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. Sequined gowns caught the light like moving constellations. Producers had rehearsed camera angles, teleprompters, applause cues. Every second was mapped. Hollywood roasting itself had long been part of the ritual. Audiences expected it. Celebrities braced for it. A gentle humiliation here, a sharp jab there, it was tradition. Then one joke shifted the temperature. It wasn't the most brutal line ever delivered on that stage. It wasn't even particularly elaborate. But beneath it sat years of public conversation about Will and Jada's marriage, her openness about personal struggles, and the internet's relentless commentary. At first, Will Smith laughed. That detail matters. His head tilted back. His expression loosened. For a fleeting second, he appeared to accept the joke as part of the ritual. But then he glanced sideways. He saw Jada's face, tight, unamused, wounded. In that microsecond, something recalibrated. Was it embarrassment? Protective instinct? Accumulated frustration? The pressure of being publicly dissected for years? Whatever it was, it propelled him out of his seat. The walk to the stage felt surreal. Cameras tracked him automatically, assuming it was a bit. The audience's initial chuckles suggested they thought the same. Even Rock smiled, bracing for improvisation. And then it happened. The sound echoed sharper than anyone expected. A crack that cut through the theater's controlled acoustics. Gasps rippled outward. A room built on choreography confronted raw unpredictability. In that instant, the illusion shattered. Award shows depend on control. Even spontaneity is rehearsed. Even controversy is timed. This was neither. Chris Rock did not swing back. He did not escalate. He blinked, steadied himself, and kept the broadcast alive. "That was the greatest night in the history of television," he quipped, voice steady but eyes sharpened by shock. Composure became its own statement. The cameras shifted quickly, muting the exchange for international feeds. In the room, confusion mixed with disbelief. Some attendees whispered. Others stared ahead, uncertain whether to clap, laugh, or remain still. Back at his seat, Smith shouted a warning, his voice no longer playful, but edged with something deeper. And just like that, Hollywood's polished ceremony became something raw and unfiltered. But the slap was not the end of the story. It was the ignition point. In the hours that followed, social media fractured into camps. Was it staged? Was it justified? Was it career-ending? Memes multiplied. Commentary accelerated. Within minutes, the clip circulated globally. The Academy faced a dilemma. How do you discipline one of your biggest stars without destabilizing the institution itself? Later that night, Will Smith accepted the Best Actor award for King Richard. His speech trembled between apology and justification. He spoke of protection, of fierce love, of being called to defend family. The audience gave him a standing ovation. That image complicated everything. If violence disrupts the sanctity of the stage, what does applause signal? Forgiveness? Confusion? Solidarity? Behind the scenes, publicists scrambled. Statements were drafted. Advisors whispered strategies. The narrative had to be managed, or at least shaped. Chris Rock, meanwhile, declined to press charges. Then came the silence. For nearly a year, Rock said little publicly about the incident. No emotional interviews. No immediate stand-up special dissecting it. In an era where narratives are seized within minutes, he waited. Why wait? Because timing is leverage. Silence creates gravity. It forces speculation to orbit around absence. Every talk show host, every podcast commentator, every cultural critic filled the vacuum with theories. But the one voice most anticipated remained still. During that year, the Academy banned Smith from attending its events for a decade. Debates about masculinity, race, comedy, and respect flooded cultural discourse. Some framed Smith as defending his wife. Others saw it as misplaced aggression. Many wondered whether deeper insecurities had erupted under global scrutiny. What does it mean to protect someone in a room built for satire? When does defense become spectacle? Rock watched the conversation unfold without intervening. Then, when he finally spoke, he did so on stage, on his terms. The setting mattered. It was not a press conference. Not a carefully edited sit-down interview. It was stand-up comedy. His arena. His craft. He didn't open with rage. He didn't begin with tears. He wove the story gradually, letting laughter guide listeners toward discomfort. "I'm not a victim," he insisted at one point. Yet he admitted it hurt. The honesty landed heavier than outrage would have. He reframed the incident. It wasn't about a single joke, he suggested. It was about selective outrage. For years, Will and Jada's marriage had been dissected publicly, through interviews, candid confessions, viral clips. Their vulnerabilities had become content. Their struggles, monetized narratives. When private pain becomes public discussion, does it remain private? Or does it become part of the cultural conversation comedians inevitably engage with? Rock argued he wasn't the origin of humiliation. He was commenting on a story already widely circulated. That assertion forced audiences to confront an uncomfortable reality. In a media ecosystem where celebrities monetize transparency, who controls the boundaries of commentary? He posed another implicit question. Why confront the comedian bound by stage etiquette, the one person unlikely to retaliate physically? Why not the countless online voices who mocked, analyzed, and speculated for years. Was the slap about honor, or about choosing the safest outlet for accumulated anger? Rock's delivery balanced humor with precision. He did not deny the sting. He did not exaggerate victimhood. He turned the spotlight toward dynamics of power and perception. Because here's another paradox. On that stage, Will Smith was the bigger star, the Oscar nominee, the beloved blockbuster icon. Rock, though influential, was the hired host. Yet in the moment of confrontation, physical dominance reversed perceived hierarchy. Power is fluid. Context defines it. The slap exposed how fragile image truly is. For decades, Will Smith cultivated a persona of charm and approachability. The Fresh Prince. The charismatic action hero. The affable late-night guest. One unfiltered reaction cracked that narrative. But was it a crack, or a revelation? Did it unveil something always present beneath the polish? Consider the pressure Smith carried that night. Years of public scrutiny about his marriage. Jokes circulating online. Questions about masculinity and vulnerability. An industry that rewards stoicism yet devours scandal. In that theater, under global broadcast, did he feel cornered by perception? And what about Rock? A comedian whose career thrived on observational sharpness. Did he miscalculate the emotional temperature of the room? Or was he fulfilling the role audiences expect, testing boundaries to reveal truth? The aftermath reshaped both men. Smith retreated from public life temporarily, issuing apologies, expressing remorse, acknowledging that violence was not the answer. He spoke of personal work, introspection, spiritual reckoning. Rock, meanwhile, leaned into the power of delayed response. When he finally delivered his special, the anticipation magnified its impact. The crowd listened not just for punchlines, but for insight. The incident became more than celebrity gossip. It became a case study in fame's architecture. Fame requires narrative consistency. Audiences invest in personas. Brands rely on predictability. When behavior diverges from image, the dissonance fascinates and unsettles. Why do we expect celebrities to embody composure at all times? Because their careers depend on it. They are products as much as artists. Yet they are also human. That night at the Oscars forced viewers to reconcile those truths. A human reaction pierced a manufactured environment. The result was chaos. And chaos reveals structure. It revealed how quickly institutions protect themselves. How swiftly narratives are shaped. How audiences oscillate between condemnation and empathy. It revealed the delicate dance between comedy and sensitivity. Between free expression and personal pain. Most of all, it revealed that power in Hollywood is neither absolute nor stable. It shifts with perception. It contracts under scrutiny. It expands with timing. Would the moment have unfolded differently if the joke targeted someone else? If the internet had not spent years dissecting their marriage? If Smith had lost the Oscar that night instead of winning? We can't know. But we can examine what it showed us. It showed that pride, when wounded publicly, can override calculation. It showed that silence, strategically deployed, can restore leverage. It showed that institutions built on image are most vulnerable when unpredictability intrudes. And perhaps it showed something even more fundamental, that fame amplifies emotion. In ordinary rooms, hurt dissipates quietly. In Hollywood, it echoes globally. So what really happened that night? A joke was told. A boundary was crossed, depending on perspective. A reaction shattered choreography. Two men stood at the intersection of pride and performance. But beneath that surface drama lay deeper currents, unresolved tension from years prior. Questions about protest and leverage. About who holds power and how it's exercised. The Oscars stage lost control for a moment. And in losing control, it revealed the machinery behind the curtain. It revealed that moral gestures without economic impact rarely destabilize institutions. It revealed that humor can illuminate contradictions, but also inflame vulnerability. It revealed that carefully curated personas can fracture under pressure. Most of all, it asked us to consider our role. We consume celebrity transparency. We amplify jokes. We dissect marriages and monetize memes. Then we recoil when the human beings at the center react imperfectly. Is that fair? Or is it simply the ecosystem we've collectively built? The slap will remain archived in cultural memory, not because of its violence alone, but because of what it symbolized. The collision between image and impulse. Between industry ritual and raw emotion. And perhaps the most haunting question lingers still. In a world where fame depends on performance, what happens when the performance drops, and the person steps forward instead? But Rock didn't stop there. He widened the lens beyond Hollywood drama and into the broader culture of celebrity victimhood. Meghan Markle became an example, not of royalty, but of narrative framing. Rock made a sharp distinction. Racism is real, but not every uncomfortable experience fits that label. His point wasn't that prejudice doesn't exist. It was that power and persecution can blur in celebrity storytelling. When someone marries into one of the most scrutinized families on earth, does surprise at scrutiny ring hollow? Is discomfort automatically oppression? Or can both privilege and pain coexist? Rock's critique targeted simplification. Celebrity narratives often flatten complexity into neat morality tales, villains and victims, heroes and oppressors. Real life, especially at the highest levels of power, is messier than that. And that theme carried into his treatment of billionaires. Elon Musk wasn't mocked for ambition. He was portrayed as isolated by extremity. When wealth reaches unimaginable levels, normal problems evaporate, and are replaced by surreal ones. Rock flipped envy into pity. Most people worry about mortgages. The ultra-rich worry about legacy, biology, space travel. Jeff Bezos received similar treatment. Even losing half his fortune in divorce left him among the wealthiest humans alive. For ordinary people, loss is catastrophic. For billionaires, it's cosmetic. Rock's underlying message: when consequences fade, ridicule becomes one of the few equalizers left. Is that cruelty or balance? Then came Jake Paul. Not simply as a boxer, but as a symbol of spectacle overtaking substance. Rock's frustration centered on what boxing had become: youth versus age, viral clips over competitive merit. Legends rented for clicks. Outrage monetized. Paul, in Rock's framing, wasn't merely a provocateur. He was a mirror. A reflection of what audiences reward now: shock over skill, controversy over craft. And that leads to a harder question. Are we complicit? Do we fuel the very spectacle we claim to despise? At the BET Awards, Rock abandoned restraint altogether. Rick Ross became a target, not just for music, but for excess. The jokes were sharp, physical, even uncomfortable. But they carried a consistent message. Fame doesn't grant immunity. In certain rooms, everything is fair game. Then Kevin Hart reappeared, not as a grievance, but as a phenomenon. Hart's ubiquity became the punchline. At some point, success crosses into saturation. When an actor appears everywhere, is that talent, or is it the industry clinging to a reliable formula? Rock wasn't diminishing Hart's work ethic. He was examining Hollywood's appetite for certainty. Studios don't just cast stars for fit, they cast them for insurance. When something prints money, the system squeezes it until exhaustion. And that, perhaps, is the thread tying all of this together. Rock's comedy, whether about actors, royals, billionaires, or influencers, mapped the same terrain: power and perception, ego and exposure. The myth that fame shields you, when in reality it magnifies you. For viewers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, this may feel familiar. We've seen institutions protect profit over principle. We've watched public figures rise, fall, and rise again. We understand that outrage cycles faster now, but human pride hasn't changed. So here's the question that lingers. Was Chris Rock exposing hypocrisy? Or was he exploiting vulnerability for laughs? Was the slap an unforgivable breach, or an eruption years in the making? And perhaps most importantly, in a culture where everything is broadcast, monetized, and dissected, who truly holds power? The celebrities, the institutions, or the audience watching from home? Because once you're everywhere, you're never off stage. And maybe the real revelation isn't about one joke or one slap. It's about a culture where image is currency, outrage is product, and restraint, rare as it may be, can be the most powerful move of all. What do you think? Did Chris Rock cross a line, or simply redraw one that fame had blurred beyond recognition? Late that night, after the lights dimmed and the lobby emptied, Rock sat on the edge of his dressing room couch. The room smelled faintly of coffee and cologne. He could still hear applause as if it had lodged in the walls. In that small private space, far from cameras and curated headlines, he traced a joke back to its first heartbeat. What starts as instinct can become a ledger of offenses and defenses. A production assistant knocked and retreated. Behind that knock lived the machinery of celebrity. Publicists who edit pain into soundbites, managers who weigh risk like currency, fans who cheer and then spin heroes into discourse. Who decides where the line sits? This is not only a tale of a headline. It is a human drama with stakes, private texts, late calls, apologies drafted and redrafted. Will Smith felt something that night, immediate and perhaps irreversible. Rock felt the old actor's itch to press at seams and see what fell out. Both men carried histories, fear, and pride. When careers collide and neither steps back, what remains? Patterns emerged beyond personalities, the way power shields and the way markets punish. A billionaire's mistake becomes a talking point. A working actor's mistake becomes a career scar. Are our systems built to heal or to harvest attention? At the center of this narrative is a call for nuance. Recognize the human inside the headline. The slap, the jokes, the online pile-ons, each is a symptom of an ecosystem that feeds on immediacy. Could restraint become radical? What if, instead of reflexive outrage, we tried curiosity, asking hard questions and resisting the comfort of certainty? The award stage scene was more than a viral clip. It was a mirror revealing not just failures but cultural architecture. How will we choose to look back? Will the moment harden into a moral talisman, or will it complicate our sense of justice and mercy?